welcome. The soul is already whole, right? So why would we need healing? What if we have mistaken what healing really is? Because yes, on one hand, the soul is already whole and it has never been broken. But on the other hand, I really deeply resonate with that healing is one of the most important things that we can do for ourselves, for our lineage, but also really for anyone that we come across in this lifetime. So how can those things be true at the same time? That is exactly the topic of today. Over the past years, I've had the chance to read people their birth charts and to access their Akashic records. And yes, we are all unique souls and we have all our unique experiences. But I do see the same patterns or wounds or questions coming up when I access those charts and when I access the records. Many times what I see is that the biggest transformation truly comes from really diving within, from really seeing yourself more from the inside out. While doing so, each time you do, you start to see yourself more from the soul's perspective. And this is exactly why I wouldn't confuse healing with fixing. It is not the same. They are truly two very different things, because healing is a form of remembering. So let's dive into why that exactly is. So a while back, I read the Akashic records for someone who was truly feeling exhausted for being told how to heal, for different ways of healing. Whatever the person was trying, it was not really helping, or it was not really fixing anything. What came through, and without going into the details, is how this person was identifying with the wounds. And that identification with the wounds created a separation of being whole, a separation from the soul self. And from that separation, a lot of limitations came through. A limitation, for example, of I cannot heal. And the shift through that session, what really happened was the permission that it was not about fixing in the first place. And that is the shift, that by going into this video, it's a permission that fixing and healing are not the same, that fixing is not the purpose of healing. And really a felt sense of what healing really is, what it can look like in practical life. Therefore, this video is really meant as an activation to guide you through that shift. Because if we see fixing as healing, we assume that something is broken. However, if we look at it from the angle of the wound, we do not need fixing. And that changes the frequency completely, because what we need for wounds, we need space holding, we need presence, we need love, we need it to be seen. It's a very different energy, it's a very different frequency than fixing something. So yes, the soul is whole, but that same soul has many different experiences. It goes out into all these different individual experiences, which we can call multidimensional aspects of ourselves. And they have experiences in the past, in the present, in the future, parallel. It's an infinite of possibility and an infinite of experiences. Though those experiences, they don't change that the soul is whole, but those experiences, they do shape how we see the world. So the essence is remaining completely whole, intact, and untouched. It's still there, the core is there, but the wounds around it, they do experience how we can access that core. And that is really reminding me of a quote of Rumi. The wound is the place where the light enters you. And that really resonates. My work is truly built on the foundation that the soul is whole, that wounds are an opportunity to transform. And as souls, we do not evolve to become whole. We evolve through experience, through actually having experiences. So when we look at a seed, for example, the seed of a flower, that seed is already whole within itself, right? But yet it is still growing to be this beautiful flower. It goes through this whole transformation. It has this whole experience to become that flower, because evolving in a way is really a part of nature. It's part of what we do. It is in our nature. So then we come to the core question. If the soul is whole, why exactly do we need healing? And why is healing then actually of importance, right? Because we are already whole. Because that soul, like we saw, has so many different experiences. And each experience leaves different imprints. And that shapes how we see the world. And some of those imprints, they can create trauma. They could create loss. They could create fear or abandonment. But they could also very much create love and birth and joy and excitement. Like, not only bad experiences have influence on us, also those good experiences, they also very much influence us, and both leave imprints. And those imprints, they shape us. They create this lens through which we see the world and how we experience reality. So again, it's not that it's damaging that core, it's not breaking anything, but it creates this layer over it. You could almost see it as like this foggy layer that makes it more difficult to access the core. And what that then does, especially if we look at more of those negative experiences, it can create a illusion of separation, because over having many and many different lifetimes, we start to identify ourselves with those imprints. We start to identify ourselves with those wounds. And from doing so, we start to believe that I'm not good enough. I have to work hard in order to receive. I have to earn love. I am limited to all that I have. That could never happen for me. But our soul and our consciousness is not limited to that at all. It is an illusion, and our perception of that is what is limiting. So healing for me is not about fixing, and it's not about repairing ourselves. Healing is actually dissolving that illusion that we were ever separate from our soul self, that we were separate from that core and that essence, and what then really happens when we do heal. Healing is not linear. It's not something you do once and then you're done, and it's also not becoming someone else or becoming another version of yourself. When you truly heal, you actually become more of yourself. You fully see yourself and all its aspects. You accept all of who you are, and you are really facing all of it. You're not looking away from it. You're not putting band-aids. No, you go really into it, and you're not looking away. You see yourself, like truly seeing yourself, without any judgment, as a witness. So in a way, you are in this complete 0 point, this frequency where it just is. And from that point, with no judgment, pure love, neutrality, that being just is, from that point, you can really fall back in love with yourself. And with each little step that you take towards healing, you increase the ability to witness yourself and to truly see yourself for who you are. And what does that? That whole practice, what I just described, is actually expanding your consciousness. You're turning the witness on, and that is expanding your consciousness. And that is what I mean. To expand is to heal. And the more your consciousness is expanding, the less you will start to identify with any of those energetic imprints or of those wounds. Those just start to dissolve. You, like everything that really creates a strong identification and attachment, they dissolve. We move away from being the wound, being really in it, to observing the wound, seeing it from different angles, from this 360 point of view. Instead of judging the wound, you start to hold compassion for it, and you start to fill it up with love instead of fearing it. And when you do that, you start to see yourself from a completely different point of view. You start to hold much more compassion for yourself and for everyone around you. You see everything through a different lens. And that different lens I like to call a higher perspective. How I always see it is the form of this eagle, like this eagle point of view. So you start to fly higher and higher, and you get this 360 bird view of everything that is happening around you all at the same time. And that situation doesn't change the wound at all. It really gives you a different perspective to that wound. You start to seeing it from above instead of being in it. And that gives you then the higher perspective, and that changes everything. That is what it feels like to really rise into your soul self, because the situations still happen and the triggers might still be there, but your reaction to it, your behavior will be completely different, because you see it with different eyes. You see it through the eyes of your soul. And when you start to see people and when you start to see yourself from your soul self, you start to see through the eyes of love. And that is such a different way of being triggered. Your experience of that will be completely different after that. And another part that I want to go into is what happens when we heal, is that we start to reclaim. And what I mean with that is that, yes, our soul has all these experiences. Some of those experiences create wounds, some create energetic imprints. Sometimes that can lead to what we call soul fragmentation. And now here I want to clarify that how I see it is that nothing really gets loose from the soul. It's not that we literally lose parts of ourselves. So how I personally work with this word is seeing it as an illusion of separation. So from whatever the experience is, we disconnect from our soul self. Again, from there the limitation starts. But then healing allows us to reclaim those parts of ourselves. And by really reinstating the the access to them, to incorporate them back into our being. And that leads to reclaiming our power, reclaiming our sovereignty and our personal truth from within. I don't see it as literally reclaiming parts of us that are floating out there or that are lost, but no, remembering how we can access them, remembering that we were never limited in the first place, and remembering that we were never separate. And then actually anchoring that fully back into our here and now and grounding us in our human, in our 3D perspective, which is such an important part of it because we are here in our physical body. So by this point, you might wonder, like, why would we even then as souls choose to incarnate, and why would we descend in the first place? And there might be very different explanations for this, but what comes to me is one cannot be without the other, meaning the experience of duality, because the soul can experience itself through creation and it can experience itself through duality, because duality creates the experience. Because think about it, we cannot see darkness without the light. We wouldn't know the experience of it. We would not be able to recognize it. And we experience this actually on the daily, with the sun rising and then setting again. We see that contrast every day. And if you start to pay attention, you see that contrast in everything in life. And bringing it back to relationships, we cannot witness the I am without witnessing the we are. It's this axis, which in astrology we call the ascendant and the descendant. They are intertwined to each other. They are the mirror for each other through relationships, through connections, because duality creates contrast, and that contrast creates experiences. And as consciousness, we do not incarnate just randomly or without purpose. We usually co-create. And how I in my sessions work with this is through soul contracts. And in many traditions, we see this coming back to soul contracts. And soul contracts are agreements to have certain experiences, and certain experiences with others or with events or with responsibilities that we take on. They can be very different, but they all create a certain experience. And how I see it, those experiences, they create opportunities. And we have a choice. We co-create. And it's not a fixed destiny. So we stay the creators of our reality. And those contracts, they show up as facilitators. And when we choose not to work with a certain contract, the experience might show up via a different way. So it's not that we can truly do it wrong. We have the opportunity and we choose how we work with the potential. It's the same as with astrology. How I see the chart is pure potential. We have the lived experience. We are the embodiment. We choose how we work with that potential. So yes, one way can be faster than the other, but it does not necessarily mean that we do it wrong or that we have missed destiny. I don't think it works like that. So why would we then make soul contracts? Why we choose that? Like I said, soul contracts can show up in very different ways. The ones that we will recognize very fast and the ones that we feel very intensely are relational soul contracts. Some of those relational soul contracts that we all come in with are, for example, parent and child soul contracts. We all come through a parent. And why would one soul choose to become your mother and another soul to be your child? That's very specific. And then we also have romantic or soul contracts. And again, one soul may break your heart and another soul contracts to be the love of your life. Thing is that these relational contracts, they create experiences that have the ability to increase our consciousness very fastly. Because in a way, we really cannot experience parenthood without another soul. We really cannot experience the heartbreak of a lost relationship with another soul. We cannot experience what it is like to be betrayed with another soul. And that is why we learn and evolve so much through relational soul contracts. I do want to also mention that as souls, we always have free will. So that doesn't mean that if something is contracted, that it has to happen, that it is fixed. The same as what I mentioned before with fixed destiny. The opportunity is there, but the outcome, the co-creation of that is up to you. And what I've also seen is that yes, one soul can fulfill the soul contract, but the other one doesn't. And that doesn't mean that the soul A still has to stay. No, that means that soul B will have more experiences and opportunities to fulfill that part of the soul contract as well. And now coming back and bringing it really all together. If we heal, we expand. So to expand is to heal. That is to remember our soul true essence. and that will change the whole experience we have here in this lifetime. And now that is beautiful in itself. That is truly a reason to heal. But that is not everything. There's so much more to it. Because even if it seems that healing is just influencing you, or that a contract is just between you and another person, just think about the ripple effect it has on the collective. All the healing that you do, all the contracts that lead to healing, everything combined together. Think about what that does on the larger scale. Because a healed mother raises their child from such a different consciousness. That child then again raises their children from a different consciousness and a different awareness. And that goes on throughout a whole lineage. And that doesn't just count for mothers. It's just one example that comes to me. But that also counts for teachers and students and all the different areas in life. It ripples through. And that is the larger impact of it. And that shows also the relational aspect of it. And even if there is no relational aspect, even if it's you and you are healing, think about the frequency that sends to the collective field. That has a ripple effect for the whole collective as well. And I really love the phrase, if an individual heals, the collective evolves. Because it rings very true. That ripple, it just goes on. So, if you can take away just one thing from today, there is no need for fixing. And healing is not the same as fixing. And the easiest thing to start is with one simple practice where you tune in and you witness a part of yourself. You just allow it to be. And from there, you take the next step and the next step. Because all those little steps create then the larger ripple. And if you want to go deeper into specific karmic imprints and karmic contracts, I made a video about that as well. I will share it here and I will share it below. And if you feel ready to start witnessing yourself from your soul self, if you like support with that, to be guided into that, that is exactly what I hold space for in my one-to-one private sessions through the Akashic Records, through astrology, through light language. You can find that here and I will put that link below as well. I've also created an oracle, the Oracle of the 13 Mothers, that is going live anytime. It goes into the 13 mother frequencies on planet, off planet, and working with this deck is really an initiation and integration back to yourself, back into your intuition. It creates basically a spiral of awakening in its own. And if you are curious about that, I will put the link to read more below too. And I will create a video about it for next week. For now, thank you for being here. Thank you for raising the frequency together, and I will see you in the next one.